we're going to start with a geopolitical and strategic analyst who has done his PhD in politics from the University of Otago, with his thesis being, who could be better today, Chewie? His thesis being on New Zealand relations with the Gulf states. I mean, couldn't literally not be a better topic, unless it was like New Zealand's relations to Donald Trump when he declares war on the Middle Eastern states. That might be 1% better, but in general, it's pretty spot on. Let's welcome to the show Dr. Geoffrey Miller. Jeff, kia ora, good evening, and thank you for joining us.
Good evening, Pat and Chewie. Good to see you again, and thank you very much for that kind introduction. So yes, in the time since I last joined you, I have indeed completed that PhD. I graduated in December 2025. Yep. And indeed, I looked at New Zealand's relations with the Gulf states in the 21st century. So it is indeed very timely to be on.
So does that mean that this is going to be a really inappropriate question, but it's sort of what I'm thinking. Does that mean today's Christmas for you? Like, is this all of your PhD ideas and research and everything balled up into one day of interviews with TVNZ and RNZ and that kind of stuff?
Look, it's a reality that there are some days where more things happen than others, and the last couple of days have felt like that kind of period. Sometimes things are quiet in the world, but more and more it's not like that, and it's just been quite frenetic last 48 hours. But we've had so many periods like this. If you think back to the 12-day war in June last year, I mean, that at the time felt unprecedented, off the charts, uncharted territory, rewriting the rule book, etc. All the metaphors and images that you could grab. But it actually pales into insignificance, really, compared with what we're seeing now, which is just a major war sweeping the Middle East, and I think sweeping up so many other countries into the bargain. It's not just Israel, the United States, and Iran. It's all the Gulf states: Bahrain, Kuwait, Oman, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates. Then you add Jordan, you add Iraq, and of course Cyprus. British bases have been targeted there. So all of those countries I mentioned are involved in this war now. It is quite breathtaking, and we're only 48 hours in.
Yeah, it's interesting when something terrible happens in the world that some people with the expertise kind of shine, which is sort of a sad indictment on the times we live in. I can remember without question, the best broadcasting, if I had to pick a singular show, the best broadcasting I've ever done was the day the Twin Towers were crashed into. Because all of a sudden we were the place people were coming to find information. So this horrific thing happens, but it was a day that certain jobs shone. And I imagine you, being an expert in this area, when these sorts of things kick off in the Middle East, it's like your time to help us all understand it. People want to understand it. Of course, your website is geoffreymiller.info. Why don't you get a doctor in there? Are you going to also get drgeoffreymiller.info? You're going to go for that as well?
I think I'll stick with geoffreymiller.info. It is just a useful place just to have all my content, all the articles I've written, and then all my social media links, because I know everyone uses different social media these days. I just give you everything there. So if you visit that website, you'll get all the links. If you're on X, if you're on LinkedIn, if you're on whatever, you'll find it there. So you can just choose whatever platform suits you best and find my content. I've even got a TikTok channel where I post my broadcast interviews as well. So it's all there. Just go there to geoffreymiller.info, and I'd be very happy to hear from you as well.
Sounds great. Okay, let's take a step backwards by a couple of days. Jeff, explain to us what happened in Iran and outside of the borders of Iran over the last few days. What are we looking at?
Yeah, so look, around 7:20 on Saturday evening, New Zealand time, my phone blew up with notifications saying that Israel had conducted a quote-unquote preemptive strike on Iran, and it didn't take long for it to become apparent that it was the United States involved as well, and this was the big military strike that many of us had been anticipating, to be honest. There had been negotiations underway between Iran and the United States, indirect negotiations brokered by the Gulf state of Oman. They were held in the latest round were held in Geneva last Thursday, but it never really seemed that Donald Trump was going to take those negotiations seriously. So over the past couple of months, he had sent what he called an armada, which I don't think is an inaccurate way of describing it, an armada of US military assets, notably those two big aircraft carriers and all the associated aircraft and naval vessels with it. And so the US had hundreds of ships and planes, all the kitchen sink, really, all the greatest elements of the US military were there in place in the Arabian Sea and elsewhere around the Middle East region, just waiting for the order. And Donald Trump and Benjamin Netanyahu determined via intelligence that the Iranian leadership were going to hold a meeting together in Tehran on Saturday morning, local time. And so that would provide an ideal opportunity to kill as many leaders as they could in one go. And they did that. 48 leaders, according to Donald Trump, 48 high-ranking members of the Iranian leadership were killed, including, of course, the supreme leader of Iran, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei. So that explains the timing. It's not usual that you strike in broad daylight. I had said to someone earlier that day, well, the strike's obviously not going to happen because it was daybreak in Iran. And normally you would expect the strike to take place around about lunchtime, New Zealand time. Nothing happened. So I thought, well, okay, not today. Maybe it's tomorrow. Maybe it's next week. Maybe the negotiations will bear fruit. But then unexpectedly, it all came around 10 a.m. Iranian time, or just after 7 p.m. In New Zealand.
Which in and of itself was kind of, it's a weird way to say it, but was kind of under the cloak of daytime because no one was expecting it. So they would have had their guards down a little bit, and then it happened. I'm just looking for the footage because actually the footage of that compound being bombed, you can be like, how did anyone survive that? That was a real destructive attack.
Yeah, they hit it with over 30 different munitions all at once. They definitely were going for a what they call a decapitation strike, take out their entire leadership in one hit.
Indeed, and look, the United States and Israel have had this success, no doubt, a rush of blood to the head for both Donald Trump and Netanyahu. The thought that they've killed, as they would see it, the head of the snake in Ayatollah Ali Khamenei. But I do recall George W. Bush in 2003 standing on the aircraft carrier with the mission accomplished banner.
Accomplished, yeah.
And that was the easy bit done, right? When Saddam Hussein's regime had been toppled and George W. Bush patted himself on the back saying, good job, all done. But then the real trouble started, and you had a brutal civil war unfold for years in Iraq, and all kinds of chaos and destruction. And second order effects came out of that. The rise of ISIS was really linked back to the Iraq War of 2003. And, there are so many, I think, as I say, legacies of that Iraq War, perhaps right up to the present day. And so this time around, you wonder what is going to happen next, because now the supreme leader is gone in Iran, but does that make them more or less likely to want to fight back against the United States? I think that in Iran, they're absolutely furious, and they're showing that now. They're showing their fury and their anger. I mean, the Epic Fury is the name of the US operation, and it's even more epic fury on the part of Iran now that this has been done to them, and they're trying to avenge the death of their leader. So what better motivation could you have, really, at this point, if you're the Iranian regime? You're going to throw the kitchen sink back at the United States. And what have you got to lose at this point, almost in a sense? They will feel betrayed, deceived. While it was not surprising that Donald Trump really didn't take these negotiations seriously, Iran was taking these negotiations, I think, in good faith. They were offering up concessions. It was slow going, but these negotiations are never straightforward. According to the Omani foreign minister who was involved in the brokering of these talks, Iran was willing to make significant concessions, including giving up their entire enriched uranium stockpile. It sounded pretty good to me. Of course, a lot of fine print, a lot of details to be worked out, exactly what else would be involved and all of this. But that's why you have more negotiations, and more negotiations were scheduled for today in Vienna. And of course, they have not taken place, and instead we have this huge scale war in the Middle East, and we have an absolute mess. We have chaos and destruction across the Middle East.
Donald Trump seems to be a bit extra pissy as well, because apparently there are some ceasefire options going backwards and forwards at the moment, and the Iranians are going, nope, no thank you, no ceasefire from this side. I'm just going to ask a quick question as well. Maybe it's a technical question. War. Is this officially a war? Like, is there a way of categorizing this as a war? What do we actually call it? Is that the correct term?
Absolutely. It's a war of aggression.
Right.
What else could you call what we're seeing on our TV screens now? It's absolutely a war, and it's a large-scale war that has enveloped now 10 countries or more in the Middle East, the entire Gulf Cooperation Council bloc, and then you add Jordan, you add Iraq, you add Cyprus. I mean, it's just extraordinary. As I said, we're only 48 hours in to this, and just some of the pictures and the images coming out, the Gulf states, which have seen themselves as safe havens, as sort of islands of stability amidst all the chaos and turmoil in the Middle East. And suddenly you've got drones hitting Dubai airport. You've got Jebel Ali port, which is one of the top 10 container ports in the world, has been struck by Iran in these retaliatory strikes. You've had smoke pouring from the US Embassy in Kuwait. And I think perhaps one of the most troubling things just tonight is that Saudi Aramco oil facilities have been apparently struck in a location called Ras Tanura, which is on the eastern coast of Saudi Arabia. Now, that's near the main Saudi oil fields. Saudi Arabia is the world's biggest oil exporter. So what will that do to oil prices? Well, I was watching the oil price just earlier, and it was going up as I was watching it. It was going up well north of 9% today. And you have to remember that the markets had already priced in to some extent the risk of a conflict. In other words, they had already gone up around 20% this year before Saturday, in the expectation that there might be a conflict. So for them to go up another 10% to around the $80 a barrel mark just shows that it is the worst case scenario, that this is even worse than the markets were expecting. And just some of these, again, second order effects from this war will be, I think, considerable. They will be immense. Just you think of the fact that New Zealand has a weaker New Zealand dollar at the moment, plus $80 US dollar barrel of oil. Just remember back to 2022 when the war on Ukraine broke out, how that sent petrol prices up to $3 a litre here in New Zealand, sent inflation up to 8%. You remember those months after the end of COVID. We could be seeing, if not a repeat, an echo of that period. In fact, it could even end up being worse. Who knows at this point? Who knows?
Yeah, and it appears that it's interesting with Alchemy, pronounce his name incorrectly, now gone. Nature abhors a vacuum. Who's going to fall into that spot? Is this now a situation where they don't really care? They're attacking and sending missiles at oil tankers in various parts of the Gulf and any country that's been an ally of America, no matter who it is, sort of thing in that area. Chewie, obviously you're the war expert out of the two of us, so you should definitely take lead here. But I just wanted to know as well. I look back to other wars, and you look at like Hitler sort of having started that war, and then Japan, the Pacific aspect of it when they bombed Pearl Harbor, and you look at all the entities that started wars and all those who responded. Who started this war? Like this war that we're in right now, who started it?
The United States and Israel started it on Saturday because there was no imminent threat from Iran. Iran was at the negotiating table. They were not about to strike Israel tomorrow or the United States next week. They had been weakened by the 12-day war, and they were negotiating. I mean, what was this all about? It was fundamentally about those protests in Iran. Now, they were brutal protests, and the Iranian regime itself has admitted 3,000 people died. The opposition claims that it's more like 7,000. Donald Trump says it's 32,000. But really, that was the motivation for all of this. It wasn't that suddenly Iran was about to strike Israel with a nuclear weapon. That wasn't the justification at all. It was that it was more of an opportunity for Donald Trump. Donald Trump, over Christmas, remember, he had that, he bombed Nigeria on Christmas Day, and then just after New Year, he captured Nicolas Maduro, and he was then, I think, drunk on power and success. He spent a lot of January talking tough about Greenland, but in the background, Iran really came up as a major topic with these protests. He spent then the next couple of months, so January, February, putting all the military assets in place that would allow a war to be conducted if he chose to do so. And that's what has transpired. So the Gerald R. Ford aircraft carrier, which is the biggest that the United States has to offer, late last week, it arrived in place off the coast of Haifa in northern Israel in the Mediterranean Sea. Now, the purpose of the Gerald R. Ford, we assume, is to provide air defense cover for Israel, because Israel was overwhelmed last time around and couldn't really defend itself as well as it thought it could in the 12-day war in June. But so once the Gerald R. Ford was in place, it was the last piece of the puzzle, and that, I guess, gave Donald Trump, in his mind, the green light to press go and start this conflict. And then the fact that they got intelligence showing that all of the Iranian leadership was going to be in one place in this meeting on Saturday morning, that just explained why this particular time was chosen for the war to begin.
Yeah, Chewie.
Yeah, there's so much thoughts I have around this. It's, for me, this is one of the final nails in the coffin of what many have referred to as the rules-based order. Every time Trump has decided to shoot from the hip and deploy America's massive military overmatch, it's just happened, and it's made everybody's head spin that it's been so just out of pocket, and then nothing really happens. He hasn't had any sort of real consequences visited upon him. Everybody kind of went, well, you shouldn't just unilaterally go in and kidnap a country's leader. And then in this case, we have Israel, we have the UK, we have Australia, we have our resident expert on foreign affairs, which we'll cover a little bit later in the show, all chiming in going, oh, yeah, no, this is fine because Iran's regime is bad. And everybody is skipping over the fact that whether they're bad or not, it's a terrible precedent that big, powerful country can just do what it wants. You know?
It's that might is right. Hannah Clark is saying that. It's that idea of might is right.
And if we don't know what goals Trump has, he might sort of go, oh, look, it's regime change. We want the good people of Iran to take control of their country. That doesn't happen after a bombing campaign. That doesn't happen with hundreds of civilian casualties. I point out that a girls' school got bombed, killing over 160 people. There are reports of a children's hospital copping a missile strike. So I guess it's very clear to work out which targets Israel seems to be hitting. They're just very practiced at hitting those two types of targets.
Had a few years practice of that, haven't they?
But there's no sign of restraint or precision or anything like that. They might have just rolled in the B-52s and started carpet bombing Tehran. But if this is the way that they're going to go, it's not going to engender any good feelings towards the US and Iran from the people that might go, well, our regime is terrible and we want them to go. But then an F-16 flung a bomb through my cousin's apartment, killed his whole family. So fuck those guys. It might retrench people into that position. And when you chop the head of an organization up, like if they hit 40, 50, 60 of their top commanders and leaders, then we know nothing of the people that are stepping into those roles. Are they moderates? Are they hardliners? Are they going to come to the negotiation table, or are they going to go, well, let's just fire everything we have, because we don't know who's making any decisions anymore. It is a mess.
Absolutely. And look, Iran has a very diffuse power structure. It's more of a horizontal power structure, or think of sort of parallel pillars or columns, perhaps, rather than a pyramid with the supreme leader at the top. This idea that just killing the head of the snake will solve all your problems is just a fallacy and a fantasy, because there are many, many others who will replace the supreme leader in terms of the decision making. When I say others, I don't even necessarily mean individuals. I mean structures and organizations. You have the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, the IRGC, which is a very powerful military force. It's both military and it's like also a political force in its own right as well. Then you have all kinds of other councils and bodies. Just the way that the Supreme Leader, or the late Supreme Leader, Ali Khamenei, set things up. He tried this deliberately. This was his strategy, not to have power embodied just in one person at the top, to have it dispersed throughout quite a convoluted power structure. And I think that will be to Iran's benefit now. And just given the situation with so much of the leadership wiped out, I think there's every chance that you've got independent circles, perhaps, of decision making now, where decisions are not necessarily being coordinated. Perhaps these strikes against the Gulf states, maybe there is no grand strategy behind it. Maybe you've just got different power centers in Iran deciding to just go all out independently. That's perhaps even more frightening from the outside perspective, to think that perhaps there's no coordination at all to what's going on with Iran. Perhaps it is just already that chaos level. It's not unreasonable to suspect that might be the case. But on your other point, Chewie, on the international rules-based order, I'd say, look, we all have our opinions and views about Donald Trump, but I think New Zealand, by implicitly condoning these US attacks, I think is contributing to the undermining of the international rules-based order. When you don't call out a war of aggression, as we've seen, committed by or undertaken by the United States and Israel against Iran, I think you're complicit, and you can't complain about all the rule breakers in the international system, the rule breakers of the international rules-based order, if you allow this kind of action to take place. And Christopher Luxon, the Prime Minister, very much doing that, in my view. He's condemning Iran's retaliatory strikes, but is just acknowledging US-Israeli actions and saying, well, Iran's bad and they're evil and they're building a nuclear weapon and they've killed their own people, so it's okay then. But I didn't actually say that. No, I don't have all the evidence. And he was a bit hapless, to be honest, at his press conference today. He was all over the place, saying both that New Zealand took an independent position, but actually our position was virtually the same as Australia's. I don't know what he was trying to say, and I'm not sure in his own mind he really knows what he was trying to say either. I think he's just trying to dance on the head of a pin to try and suggest that New Zealand is not supporting the US actions, while actually indicating, actually we kind of are. And that's the position, by the way, that a lot of Western countries are finding themselves in. The position of the United Kingdom, France, Germany is not really much better or any different to what New Zealand is doing. I think it's quite shameful. And of course, there have been others like Helen Clark who have made that point. the way that New Zealand is conducting itself on this. It's not the first time, though. We saw very similar reactions from Western countries to the capture of Nicolas Maduro, where you had the leader of a sitting leader of a sitting president of a state kidnapped. And that's against the rules as well. But no one really wanted to go out there and criticize Donald Trump for it, because no one wanted to get punished with a 5,000% tariff or whatever. But the international rules-based order doesn't end in one big bang. It ends in being chipped away over time. And I think New Zealand, by taking this position, I think it diminishes itself in international relations. And we could have hoped for a little bit better. I think really what New Zealand should have done was to think back to that independent foreign policy position. I think to support the likes of Oman, the Gulf state of Oman, which was dealing with all these negotiations, which was brokering these negotiations between Iran and the United States. You think what a thankless task this was, because they probably knew that they were being deceived. Everyone knew that Donald Trump was probably just going to do as he liked, and yet Oman tried its best, tried its hardest to get Iran and the United States around the negotiating table. They carried out 3 rounds of negotiations this time around, and they did more last year before Donald Trump undermined them with the 12-day war. It's quite a humiliation in a sense that Oman has now subjected itself to twice, being deceived by the United States, which was not negotiating at all in good faith. I think New Zealand could have supported Oman, could have spoken out in favor of diplomacy, dialogue, de-escalation, and I think could have spoken out more strongly today and yesterday after this war began. There have been others in the West who have done so. Pedro Sanchez, the Prime Minister of Spain, simply condemned it and said it was a unilateral act of aggression. Norway is also leaning in that direction. I think you might see more Western countries perhaps begin to take that position if the situation continues to spiral out of control. But for now, the likes of the UK, France, Germany, they're pretty much behind the United States, even if they're not saying the word support. And New Zealand's pretty much in that category. You also have others like Australia, which are openly using the word support. New Zealand trying to be a bit cute, perhaps, by saying not saying the word support, but actually supporting the US in its actions. I think it's all a bit disappointing.
The chip away thing you're saying is the classic example of almost the dictionary definition of shifting the Overton window, isn't it? Then all of a sudden you've got a new norm. I've got one last question for you, Jeff. And this is maybe more an opinion-based one, and I'm going to lead it in. There's this young new politician in America that not many people have heard of. I'm going to let speak to this first, but why? Why has America and Israel done this? Now, I don't know if you heard of this guy. His name's Donald Trump, I think is his name, and he had some pretty clear ideas back in 2011 as to why any president would bomb Iran. Here's some examples put together by Brian Tyler Cohen.
2011, in order to get elected, Barack Obama will start a war with Iran. 2012, I always said Barack Obama will start a war with Iran in some form prior to the election. Also 2012, now that Obama's poll numbers are in a tailspin, watch for him to launch a strike in Libya or Iran. He is desperate. Also 2012, don't let Obama play the Iran card in order to start a war in order to get elected. Be careful, Republicans. Or this from 2011.
Unfortunately, we have a president that doesn't know the first thing about negotiation. We have a real problem in the White House. So, I believe that he will attack Iran sometime prior to the election because he thinks that's the only way he can get elected. Isn't it pathetic?
Or this from 2012.
I've said before, I think Obama will go to war with Iran because I think he views it as good politically, and that's pretty sad, and it's a pretty sad thing to have to say, but I think he will absolutely go to war with Iran. I think he views that as a positive from a political standpoint, and I think he's just waiting for the right moment. And I think Iran better be damn careful because they are overplaying their hand just like Gaddafi and just like Saddam Hussein.
So if you're wondering...
so if you want to just replace the word get re-elected with midterms, you might be looking at a similar thing. So we all know why Trump thinks you invade Iran, and that's as a distraction. As Chewie said earlier, this is the Epstein War. Jeff, why do you think this has happened? What's the rationale behind this war?
Yeah, there's so many contradictions to Donald Trump. He came in, didn't he, promising no foreign wars, and yet he's shown a great appetite for these kinds of military interventions and strikes. He talks about peace, and he's the lifelong chair of the Board of Peace, and the recipient of the FIFA Peace Prize. And he won the Nobel Peace Prize because Maria Corina Machado gave him her prize. But yet he thinks this is a good idea. I don't understand it, because in the United States, only 27%, according to a recent poll, of US voters support this war. It's not popular even with a lot of Donald Trump's own base. I think Donald Trump genuinely in his head thinks that he can go in there, do his performative strike, come out, declare victory, go home, and it will make him more popular. He can sell himself then as a victor and a winner. And I think he's thinking back to killing Qasem Soleimani. He likes to talk about this a lot, the Iranian general that was killed in Baghdad back in 2020, in January 2020, just before COVID. And I think he was drunk on success, in his view, with the capture of Nicolas Maduro. So he probably thought, this is it. I can kill the supreme leader of Iran. I'll kill him. We will destroy Iran. We'll beat them into submission. We'll destroy all their ballistic missiles, destroy all their air defense facilities. They won't be able to fight back. And we'll go home and they'll be completely obliterated, Iran. But he hasn't banked on the fact that Iran is just a lot stronger than many people think it is. It has a lot more missiles, has a lot more of these drones than we think. And it's been able to do an awful lot of damage in just 48 hours across the Middle East. It's managed to bring global aviation almost to a standstill by knocking out those commercial airports in the Gulf states. It's been able to, I think, retaliate quite smartly. And I think, as I said at the outset, I think this is all spiraling out of control. It's going to get a lot worse before it gets better. Donald Trump's endgame, I don't think he's got one. I don't think he knows really how to get himself out of this. But I did see this morning a report that he claimed that Iran wants to talk. I don't know whether that's genuine, whether he's making that up. It might be that Donald Trump realizes that he needs an off-ramp here, and that's the way he can try and spin it, that Iran wants to negotiate at this point, and then he can negotiate an answer. But my sense is that Iran is only just getting started here with this retaliation. And why would they stop? I think they want to throw the kitchen sink back at the United States and Israel. And what have they got to lose? So I think the full fire and fury is coming out of Iran now, and it's being directed towards the United States, Israel, and all of their allies throughout the Middle East.
And Israel doesn't really have a leg to stand on to say you shouldn't be bombing us because they just bombed them. And I know the spin will be on it. I think the thing with Israel is they've just been beating up on a weaker little associate for the past 3 years, and they probably have. They think they can do anything to anyone. But I mean, it's propaganda, and I wouldn't be surprised if some of it was AI. But I've seen the videos coming out of Iran through their bunkers of the number of drones and missiles, and it is definitely propaganda. But it doesn't mean it's not true either of what they've got to fire around the Middle East and potentially further afield versus what Palestinians in Gaza had with their slings and improvised devices. So, yeah, it's going to be fascinating. Chewie, we're going to let Jeff go now because he's been up all day doing this. Anything you want to finish up with before we let him go?
I did have a question there, but it is completely gone. So we'll let Jeff finish up with his very, very long day.
Yep. Jeffrey, thanks for joining us. If people want to follow your writings and meanderings, and as you've said, all your social medias are there as well, including TikTok. We'll check that one out tonight. jeffreymiller.info. And thank you for joining us. It's one of those things, isn't it? Like I said at the start, it's kind of some people shine or are necessary when these sorts of things happen. It's almost like I want to say, hope we don't speak to you again too soon, but I fear we'll be speaking to you again quite a bit for the next few months because of what's going on in the Middle East at the moment.
Hey, thanks very much, guys, for having me on the show. And I also just add on my website there, you've got a link to my YouTube channel, and I put up my broadcast interviews on there as well as on TikTok. So if you're more of a YouTube person, check out the YouTube channel. But you've got all of the options there on my website. And thank you very much to you for the invitation tonight. It's been great to chat to you again. And I would agree with you. I'd hope not to have to talk to you again soon, but I fear that there will be new developments. And as I said, it's felt like a very long 48 hours, just given how much has happened over the last couple of days. So who knows what could happen in a week or a month.
Always happy to talk to you. Always happy to talk to you, Jeff. It's just that unfortunately when we do this kind of talking, it's there's something bad's happened generally if we're doing this kind of talking, which is sad for the world. Hey, thank you for your time. I'm sure we'll be in touch again soon. And I'll send you a link tonight. I'll send you this video and you can have it in your own database and do whatever you want with it. So thanks for being on board, and we'll talk to you soon.
Hey,
all right.
Thanks, Pat and Chewie.
All
Have a good night.